Okay, so in this tutorial we're going to look at putting the bones inside the fish. Okay, just a few things to check. You just need to check that the pivot point is in the center of your mesh, particularly on the x-axis, or depending, actually it could be on the y-axis if your fish is pointing this way. If you've modeled your fish kind of sideways on, always check the axis point. So this is our x-axis down here. Okay, so we need to make sure the pivot point's in the center there. You can do this by clicking on the mesh, going to modify and center pivot. We also want to make sure that this is in the center of the grid, so if I just pull this out, over in this space here, and this point on 0, 0 on the X and the Z and the Y. This is where when you create joints, it actually puts them down this axis depending which viewport you're doing this from. So if you're doing it from a side viewport, it's going to put these right down the center on this 0 line on that axis. Okay, it just means we don't have to move the bones afterwards into the fish mesh. Just saves a bit of time. So let's grab this, and if we want to center this to the grid, we can always snap to grid up here. We can also use X shortcut and click over it, and then just drag it over. If you need to just go into wireframe, you need to check that. Okay, that's fine. Check everything else, things like the eyes, everything that's in place. You might want to at this point get all the mesh. Let's just grab this, this, and this, and you could group these together as one whole thing. So we can just press G. Sorry, Control G. And this creates a group, so I'll call this fish mesh. Okay. If we need to get to that group, we can click on any part of the mesh and just press up, the up arrow key on the keyboard, and that gets us to the group. Okay. We can also do that in the outliner. So let's start working on this. The final thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to go up, click on the group, and I'm going to make sure that these are all on this layer. Let me just see if I can delete this layer without deleting the objects. I'll show you how I've done this. Selected objects. Okay. Let's delete this layer. Okay. So if we click on this and click up, we'll get the group. And what I can do over here is go to our layers menu and make sure you're in the channel box layer editor. Go to our layers menu, and we're going to create a layer from selected. I'm going to double click on the name, and we can call this fish mesh. Let's give this a color and just save that. Okay. I just got that name already, so fish main mesh. Don't use any spaces on this. If you need to use any gaps, use underscores. Let's click save. The nice thing about that is now this is on a layer, we can actually go in and we can do a couple of things. We can hide that layer completely. We can click on this layer and template it, which we can just see the wireframe there. Or we can create a reference where we see the object, but we can't actually do anything with that. We can't select any parts of that object. Okay, really useful. So I'm going to go into a side view. You always need to be in an orthographic view when you're putting bones in. Don't do it in a perspective view. Okay, so let's just go into this view and go into this. So in terms of placement of bones on this, we want the spine to come down the center in terms of the horizontal, the vertical on this, down the center of this line. This just gives it a better area to work with when it comes to binding this. Technically the actual spine comes over this way, but if we do that, the envelope that surrounds that for binding may not come down here as much, so we may lose some of these vertices if we do it that way. So I'm just going to have these running down the center. The other thing is where we need to start this bone structure from. If we actually start it from the head down and go all the way down, this actually causes problems. If we want to just animate the head on its own, what we would be doing is animating the entire body. If you remember the introduction session, when we animated the root bone, it actually animated everything, or if we rotated that, it rotated everything else after it. So that's not the best way to do this. What we need to do is start from an area around here. So if you think about where, if you imagine these to be the arms of a human character, if you think where the shoulder would be, that's where we're going to start this bone chain. Okay. So I'm going to go into my animations. I'm going to go to joint. So I'm going to start around this area here. How many bones depends on how much flexibility you want with the animation. Because this is quite a low poly character anyway, we don't need that many. So I'm going to go in and create sort of every... I usually use my mesh as a guide to this. I'm going to go sort of every other one. Everything's quite evenly spaced out. I'm going to go to the tail, and I'm just going to take this out right to the end, and then press enter. So that's my first chain. Okay. For the head, I'm going to create a separate chain. So I'm going to click on joint tool again, and we don't need to go over this one at all. We don't need to match the position of it. Only if it follows that it needs to be there. We can offset this. So I'm going to go to just above this. I'm going to go pretty much, let's just make sure we click off of that chain. And I'm going to go just down. Let's just set that. Let's just bring this about here. And click that out. Okay. So what this is going to do, just go into this joint, this is going to give us a rotation for the head. We need to actually connect these two together. If we move this one right now, the head bone doesn't go with it. So we need to parent this in. Okay. We don't want to parent the root of this chain to the head, because that will give us a similar kind of problem to what I mentioned at the start of this. You know, if we started the root here and work down the body. So what I'm going to do is go from this and have this a child of the root. So we click on this bone, we shift click on the next one and click P, and that creates a chain between these two. So now when I move the root, it moves the whole chain. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to create is a jawbone for this. So again, go to my joint tool. Just come off everything. Go to my joint tool, and I'm going to start this around, just thinking around this point here. And again, just come out, press enter. And we need to parent this in again. So with this one, we don't want to parent this into the root. What's going to happen if we do that is when I rotate this, it's not necessarily going to rotate the head, it's going to rotate the jaw. Or when I rotate the head, rather, what we want to actually do is have the jawbone follow that head, part of the head bone itself. So we're going to have this as a child, shift click on the head as a parent, and then click P. We're going to do pretty much the same with the other areas of this. Okay, so let's just work through this. We'll go through, we're going to create a new joint chain. In the dorsal, the dorsal fin, depends how much flexibility you want with this. If we want a bit more, we can actually create two joints through this. I'm just working up through the middle of this. But with this one, I'm just going to go quite simple. I'm just going to create one. So I'm just going to create one at the base of this, and then one up and out. Okay. Again, we need to parent this in. So let's just go to to my selection tool. I'm going to click on this as a child, and once again we need to think about where we're going to parent this to. You can see where this is in line with the mesh. So rather than parenting it straight to the root, we want to parent it so when this rotates, this will go with it. Okay, otherwise it'll just get left behind. So let's use this one as the parent. Just shift select that, click P. Let's carry on, same down here. New root chain at the base, out. Press enter. Just click this one. Same thing, we're going to use this as the root, P. Down to the tails. I'm going to create one from here to here, one from, let's do a new joint, one from here to the tip. Let's take these and let's parent this to this tail, P. P. Okay. So we've got all our joint chain for the side, and everything on this, if we just move the root around, should follow the root nicely. Okay. So let's look at these side fins. I'm going to go into a different viewport for this. I'm going to go into the top viewport. Let's just look at this. Similar thing. Just take the joint. I'm going to click on around the edge of this, and it's going to go right to the end. If you've got a different shape in this, you might want to create a number of different bones in this. Just for simplicity, I'm going to go right to the end here. Okay. We might have to just look at that in another view. So if I go into the front view, oops, just move that. You can see this is in the wrong place. So if I grab the root, move this down. Just going to look at this in perspective. See, that's not quite at the right angle, so I'm just going to take this and rotate this up. Remember, if you're moving these into position, then you're going to have to check the orientation. Okay. With this one, I'm just going to look at these nubs, and I need to look at a few of these end bones actually. I want to move this out. I'm just going to switch into, if I double click on my move tool, I'm just going to click into a local translation on this. I'm going to move this out, just so it's outside of the frame, and then just go back to my object translation. Okay. Yeah, let's look at this nub bone. So these end ones, I'm just going to click on this, say they need to match the orientation of the joint before it. So if we go into the attribute editor, you can see here, I just need to zero that out. Let's fix that problem. Let's do the same on the others. So let's just go into this one. Any joint orientation we've got on there, we just need to zero out. Grab this one. You could get scripts that do this kind of thing for you as well. But with this kind of structure, okay, that one should be, let's do it anyway. There you go. Okay. Let's just check these two. So that's all cleaned up. Let's go into wireframe, and there you can see the bone structure inside the fish. Okay. Now, one thing we do want to do with this is we want to go through and name these bones. So I'm just going to go into my layers. I'm just going to switch off the visibility of this. So I'm going to go in here. This is the root. So let's call this JNT for joint. Let's call this root. And do the next one is call this JNT prefix, and I call this spline underscore 01, and I'll copy that. O2, O3. I'm going to call this JNT tail 01. Just going down the chain here. This one I'm going to call let's call it end tail. I'm differentiating the prefix on these just so we can use this for selection purposes. So by calling this end, or we can ignore it from selections. So let's go up the tail. This is going to be joint tail. Let's call it for simplicity tail top. I'm going to copy that. Let's call this tail, or let's call this end. There's different naming conventions. Different people use different things. If you're working in a studio, you'll take on their naming conventions. Let's just copy this. And actually, let's just paste this. So I'm just copying and pasting all of these just very quickly. It is really important to name things. So this is JNT, this is dorsal, and again let's copy this, paste it. What's left? Don't actually know the name of this film. Let's call it JNT fin bottom. Bear with me. Let's go down the head. So this is going to be JNT head. Okay, nearly done. And finally, let's call this JNT fin side. Let's call this fin side underscore, and this is going to be the left hand side. Paste this, end. Okay. Yeah, it is really important to name the bones. Organisational sake, for more complex structures, and doing different rigging, different kind of scripting with things. It is so important. Give them a name, give them a consistent name, and give them something that makes sense. Okay. Finally, we just need to deal with this side fin. We need to parent this to something. The root in this case is the obvious bone. So let's just click on the side fin, shift click on the root, click P. And then we need to create one for the other side as well. Now Maya can do this for us. So let's click on this. We don't need to click on the root, we need to click on this joint. Let's just go into skeleton and mirror joint. So with this one, the mirror across is the important thing. And just looking at this gizmo here, I'm looking to create a flat plane where there would be a flat plane going through here. So we're looking at the Y and Z axes. Okay, so just check that yourselves. Replacement name for duplicated joints, I'm going to search for, remember we did the _L, I'm going to replace with _R. And let's mirror that. That's a great tool. It actually connects it in and binds it and rigs it, parrots it into the root, and also it gives us the correct naming structure as well. So that's a mirror joint tool. Let's just do some cleaning up here. So let's go ahead and select all of these bones. I'm going to create a layer for these. So layer, create layer from selected, and let's call these fish bones. Let's give this a different colour. Okay, so that's creating the bones for the fish.